so you want to build a natural pool, or at least see how it's done. The first step is to learn what it takes to design, build, and maintain this type of pool. I myself started by reading the book shown here. Kircher and Thon walk you through the types of natural pools and different methods to maintain water quality. They provide technical guidance on sizing of pumps, pools, and treatment zones. However, note the units they use are standard international, not English. They cover the types of plants that can be used to clean your pool and keep your little ecosystem healthy. The design I chose was a technical wetland using a waterfall for aeration. I have a 60 GPM pump which circulates water from a pond skimmer through a limestone biofilm zone, from which overflows into the wetland section filled with cattails and reeds. After filtering, the water travels through a stream and returns to the pool via a waterfall. In addition to the piping to the treatment zone, I also incorporate a recirc line to provide a current to push water back to the skimmer. The recirc line also contains valving to discharge directly from the pump to my yard for when I vacuum sediment from the pool floor. The pool is 35 feet by 20 feet and slopes from 3 feet deep to 7 feet at the deepest point. The treatment zone is 40% of the size of the pool itself, which is 13 feet by 25 feet. Now here's how I did it. As you can see, I've leveled the ground where I'm going to put my pool. And I've staked out the corners of my area that the pool is going to be in, but now we're going to give it a natural shape by laying down some garden hose and giving it some curves. Okay, so we're going to lay down the garden hose in between our stakes. Instead of laying string, I'm just going to use an imaginary line between the two stakes. Kind of give it a nice curve, but not go too far in or out of that line. All right, so we'll lay down the garden hose, which it's stiffer than a rope, and it'll give us a nice smoother edge. Try and get the curves out of it. Okay, once you have your layout set with your hose, then you get some marking spray paint, and you're going to go ahead and trace the hose. The next step is to dig a trench around the perimeter of your pool, which will be used to hold your liner in place. I dug a trench in the corner for my overflow to go. The trench is about a foot deep. It's just enough to hold the liner in place once rock is placed on top of it. Alright, now I'm going to work out and find out where the bottom of my slope is, because I have to angle it down. Don't want straight down, again, don't want too shallow. So at this shorter, shallow end, it's only 1 foot, and then the deeper end, the base of the slope is wider. So I got 1 foot here and then 2'4" over there. So I'm just going to work my way around and determine where my perimeter is off of where the bottom of my slope will be. And I'm just kind of eyeballing this from where my line was. And now I'm out here towards the deeper, where it gets deeper into my stick. Now I don't want to go 1 foot, I actually want to go further, so I'm going to go about halfway now. Next easy line. And now I'm at the deepest section for my mark. I'm going to go my deepest slope. And that's going to go the whole way off of this back wall. Okay, I connected the dots. This section back here is where my waterfall will go, and it's going to be straight down, so I'll be digging that back further. Now it's time to start digging.
Okay, so I've dug down far enough. I'm going to install my retaining wall. And the purpose of my retaining wall is so I can have a vertical wall in my deep section below my waterfall. So rather than hauling all this dirt out and making this too steep, I'm going to build my retaining wall first and then dig this section out and dump it behind the retaining wall. Ten-inch spikes, 4 per tie. Okay, so I got 4 rows of ties down. Now I'm going to start reinforcing it. I'm using Geogrid. It's a fiberglass reinforcement. It's really good for reinforcing walls, so I'm going to lay this down in a couple stages, and this is going to be my first stage. Okay, now that I got it cut, laid down, I'm going to nail it down, and then when I lay the tie on top of it, the weight of the tie plus the spikes going through will also secure it, besides the little nails. This is kind of just to hold it temporarily. Okay, so I've added 6 more rows of ties. I'm putting another row of Geogrid down, and I'll finish up the last 3 or 4 rows here. Get to my final height for the retaining wall. Also excavated some more dirt out of the dig site. Had to work it down a ramp. Okay, after completing the wall, I backfilled it. 14 rows. Ties, and start shaping the deep end. Okay, so I raked all the large rocks, which I have tons of sharp rocks, which makes me nervous, but I raked all the large rocks out of the lower, deeper section, and then I backed in trailer and dump sand, and now need to spread that out.
After spreading out the sand, we laid a layer of extra plastic over the slopes to act as a buffer between the dirt and the liner. The pole liner I used was 30 mil reinforced polyethylene, 50 feet by 43 feet, oversized to allow for slope and contouring. With the help of the family, we were able to maneuver it around, leaving slack to allow for settling when it's filled with water. A critical step is to make sure that you contour around the edges, leaving enough slack. Otherwise, the polyethylene may be stretched too much and tear. I went with reinforced polyethylene because it doesn't require an underlayment, and that helped keep the cost down. The next step is to fill the perimeter trench with 2B stone. In addition to holding down the liner, the trench is also utilized to convey water around the pole rather than in it. It's designed to flow out the outlet trench on the far side. One mistake I made was to put too much stone in the trench. This made it difficult to fix sections of the liner that were stretched too tight. After the liner was in place, I began filling the pool slowly. Then I began working on the stone landscaping and the waterfall feature. With the stone wall in place, it established the elevation of my treatment zone. I began marking and excavating that as well as I did with the pool. I used a transit to survey the pool and the treatment zone. Another tool that worked well was a laser level. I got this one at Harbor Freight for around $60. You can't see the laser line in the daytime, but you can see the laser dot. So if you spin it manually, you'll be able to get your elevation. Once the water elevation got high enough, I was able to confirm or adjust the elevation of the pool. At that point, I was able to finalize the elevation of my skimmer and connect a 2-inch polyethylene suction line to it. The skimmer I bought was a PS 4500 pond skimmer from pondliner.com. The pool pump discharges to a 2-inch polyethylene line to the treatment zone, and also a side stream via a 1-inch polyethylene line located in a bulkhead port on the far side of the pool to create a return current to the skimmer. There was also a discharge line here for vacuuming. The pump I used was a Pentair Superflow pool pump, 3/4 horsepower from Dohany's. Back to the treatment zone. I dug the treatment zone 26 feet by 13 feet and 20 inches deep. There are 2 treatment sections. The first is a small biofilm treatment section where the water enters from underneath. It percolates up through the gravel and overflows into a technical wetlands. After being filtered and cleaned by the cattail roots, the water flows out into a small stream and back to the pool via the waterfall. I installed 2 pipes into the treatment zone. One was the supply from the pump discharge, and the other one was an underdrain for cleaning. I used bulkhead fittings, but these ended up leaking, so I ended up abandoning that and plumbed the discharge from the pump over the berm and down into the treatment zone, and I abandoned the underdrain. I cut a 3-inch PVC pipe 8 foot long. I then marked 2-inch slots 8 inches on center on 2 lines 6.5 feet long at the 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock positions. The first 16 inches had no slots. Afterwards, I installed a 3-inch cap on the end of the pipe. I then installed the pipe in the treatment zone and connected it to the plumbing via a 2-inch by 3-inch reducer. I then glued it to the reducer. I backfilled the Biozone with 2B limestone. I filled the wetland zone with 8 inches of coarse river gravel, followed by 6 inches of pea gravel. I then transplanted cattails and reeds I salvaged from nearby. Afterwards, I installed coarse river gravel and some pea gravel in the stream, along with some stones. Once the water level was high enough, I was able to prime and test the pump. Here you can see the water percolating up through the limestone. The intent of the limestone is to raise the pH of the water and provide a place for beneficial bacteria to grow. Keeping the pH above 8 helps slow the growth of algae. In addition, the cattails and reeds compete for the nutrients, so the algae has nothing to feed off of. Here's a look at the vacuum system. I installed a 1.5 inch ball valve off of a T within the skimmer box. I shut that valve and unscrew a cap on the other end of the T. I screw an adapter to the T threads and connect a standard 1 1/4 inch pull hose to it. I added an inline strainer to keep rocks and leaves from getting into the pull piping or pump strainer. Before turning the pump back on, I closed the bypass line on the far side of the pull and opened up the discharge line that goes out into my yard. Then it's just like vacuuming a normal pull, except there's a little bit more silt. This pull was a lot of work. I was fortunate to source all my landscape rocks and cattails from a neighbor down the road. I had a lot of silt in the pull when I first opened it. It took a few weeks to settle out, and then I vacuumed it out. You need to have a good source of makeup water. I ran my garage gutters into the pull underneath the deck and also have a well for backup. The first year I built the deck and steps to get in and out of the pull. The following spring I built a larger deck around the fire pit. The following spring our family planted flowers and installed the landscaping you see here. What you see here is the culmination of a lot of work. I spent somewhere around $4,000 to $5,000 on the whole project, which isn't too far off from the cost of an above ground pool. However, I do not need to add chlorine or chemicals. I just test the pH and add bleach to the pool to bring the pH up periodically. I recirculate the water through the bypass line until there is no free chlorine present before I send it back to the treatment zone. I wasn't able to find any good videos on how to build a natural pool online, so I decided to do my own research on how it can be done and did it myself. I hope this video helps you learn how it can be done and maybe inspires you to take on a project of your own. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. I wish you good luck and thanks for watching.